every now. Good morning. It's Lydia Naboo from Stockton, Missouri. Today is Trials and Triumphs once again, and my guest is Dana White. Um, she used to live in Stockton, and she was married to a friend of mine, and she's got how many kids you got?
I have 3 children of my own, and then I have 6 stepchildren and 14 grandkids.
Awesome. Yeah, I've only got 3 grandkids. Can you share some of
I
yours?
absolutely can.
Anyway, um, Dana's here to kind of talk a little bit about things that have gone on in her life and how she has managed to step past those things to some degree and understand the healing and the love of God and how that has brought her through some various situations. Um, let's start out with your son who was in a farming accident.
Yeah, he worked for a pig slaughtering plant in Pleasant Hope, Missouri, and he went to turn the conveyor belt off, and his glove got stuck, and it pulled him up into the conveyor belt, and he nearly lost his arm. It was only hanging on by like 20%, and he lost a lot of blood. Um, there was a lot of things after that, but the outcome of that was that he went to a lot of physical therapy, lots of prayers, lots and lots of prayers, and he's now working full time. When they said he wouldn't hardly be able to use that arm, and he has 6 beautiful children and a lovely wife, and he works where I work at, and
Oh, well, that's
full
good.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, you get to see him every day and make sure he doesn't hurt himself
That's
again,
right.
right?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, I know my uncle at one point had ran both of his arms into a combine
Hmm.
and broke them both. Managed to pull his arms back out
Oh, yeah.
and drive himself to my mother's house to go to a hospital. And
That's
he
something. Yeah.
walked into the clinic and they said, "Well, do you have an appointment?" He said, "If I'd known I'd broken my arms, I would have made one." It was a very difficult time at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you have another son, and he
Hmm.
spent 363 days in the hospital. What
That's
was
right.
going on with that one?
He had an ulcer that ruptured, and it caused all kinds of toxic things,
Mhm.
his intestines to swell. And they actually, when they went into, they didn't really know what was going on, but when took him to surgery, and his intestines literally swelled outside of his body. So they had to try to get those under control to get him back.
Mhm.
And it was very traumatic. And he was in a coma for 30 days. I had a nurse pull me aside, and I just wanted to know what his chances of survival were. And he said that, he had less than a 30% chance of surviving that. He went septic 3 times. I saw that crash cart in his room more
Mhm.
than twice. And that's, and you sit there and you'd watch his vitals, and it was very, very stressful. And, oh, we had so many people praying, all over the world. And he is doing as good as good as he can. He doesn't have a full health, but he goes to dialysis twice a week. A lot of people that have gone through what he's gone through has to go at least 3 times a week.
Mhm.
But he holds his levels pretty good, and he's making lots of memories with his two boys, Bo and Toby, and his wonderful wife Dawn. And he takes them fishing, hunting, and he celebrates the good days, and when they're bad days, he sits around and heals. But
Mhm.
he's doing great.
Well, that's always a good thing. Now,
Hmm.
whenever he was in the hospital, you were in a wheelchair at that
Yeah,
point, were you
yeah.
not?
I
You were
couldn't
on
walk those.
disability.
Yeah. I have degenerative disc disease, and I also have fibromyalgia, and I am a breast cancer survivor. And so, yeah, I had to go to that hospital, and I had to use that wheelchair a lot, and I hurt a lot, had a lot of pain myself. And so, um, like I told you, one day God just spoke to my heart and said, "You take the first step, and I'm going to meet you there." And He's never missed a beat since then. He's been there for me. I feel Him all the time, all over my life. And He's just given me an overwhelming uh, drive to live my best life,
Mm-hmm.
live it happy and fulfilled.
Because it took you a long time to get there, didn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. It didn't happen overnight. Yeah.
Excuse me, I have a horrible cough. I'm not sick. I was just way out in the weeds yesterday
Oh
for a
yeah,
lot of the day.
yeah.
My allergies are not being friendly today. But our church is put back together, so I'm going to
Yeah,
be happy.
yeah, that's a good thing.
So now you yourself have been suicidal in the past,
That's right.
and you were in,
Suffer with depression. I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder.
and you were in a psych ward a few times
Hmm.
also because of that, were you not?
Yes, I was. Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
it's amazing how many people don't seek the help. You at least sought help,
Yes.
and I've known a lot of people with you know suicidal thoughts and psychiatric disorders, and they a lot of times will just shut down and not bother to follow through with any kind of treatment
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everything. But I've known some awesome men of God that the Lord healed them and they walked out of that depression and all the medications that they were on, and they lived a glorious life.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
One of the ministers we had here, Dennis Code, he died a couple of years ago, 2019. And, but he came from an alcoholic, drug addicted past and psychiatric, prison a few times, once for manslaughter and stuff. But whenever he got a hold of God, he went full bore. And the Lord healed him, and he got off all of his medications, and he had an amazing ministry to the homeless and
That's wonderful.
alcoholics
Yeah.
and the drug addicts. And
Yes.
he'd take guys in from out of prison that were
Mm.
starting their walk with God. He had an
Yeah.
amazing ministry before he died.
Yeah.
We all need to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
And God is our stronghold.
He is.
He's our strength.
He's our anchor. He's our anchor. I mean, that's once I decided that I was not going to live a life like that anymore. I mean, it just is incredible how he's constantly with me. I don't ever feel like he leaves me. You know how some people will talk about, well, I just don't feel God anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't have all the answers, of course, but for me, it was when God said, "You take the first step, and I'm going to meet you there," and he has never left my side since.
Yeah.
And you really all it takes is a little bit of faith. It really doesn't take some huge amount of faith.
Right.
He
Yeah.
will grow your faith.
That's something that will progress with your life as
Mm-hmm.
soon as you accept what He's offering.
Right, right.
And without the Lord in our lives, there's a lot of us here that probably wouldn't be alive today if it hadn't been for the Lord
No,
stepping in.
that's correct. Yes.
Now, another big thing in your life was your last husband
Mm-hmm.
was a friend of mine. A very amusing, very God-filled man. If you met him on the streets, he was always smiling, and he'd give you a hug and tell you how much God loved you.
He oozed Jesus. He oozed Jesus.
Now, Clint was a really bad alcoholic for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and he managed to get past that, and
Mm-hmm.
he always credited the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
But then a few years back, Clint got kind of a bad diagnosis. What was that?
Yeah. He noticed that he was starting to, like, at our jet ski shop, he was starting to forget things. Like, I mean, he could put a motor together better than anybody I know. And he was leaving parts out. And so, and he was getting really frustrated at work. And so we started, going to doctors to see what was going on with him, that with his concentration and things like that. And one thing led to another, and he began to feel like he was just living in the past. He felt like, that it was like a flashback to him.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know it, but the summer before, he had decided to end his life. He had started drinking, but he, like I said, he thought he was living his past life, and he thought that he really thought that was what he was supposed to do. And anyway, the doctors finally diagnosed him with Alzheimer's, and I remember he came home that day. I wasn't feeling well that day, and he said, "Well, it's our worst fear." And I said, "Well, honey," I said, "there's so many new treatments and medicines and stuff. It's okay." And I said, "I'm going to be there for you every step of the way. I will take care of you." You know, I told him all the what a wife would say. You know, and he just, I don't know what happened, but I think that he just couldn't stand the thoughts of not being him. You know, losing himself.
Yeah. Now his mother had Alzheimer's.
That's right.
Did she not?
Yeah.
So he knew what the
He
progression
knew
was
what was
going
going
to
to happen, and he actually helped take care of his mama.
be.
So he knew what the future was going to look like with that diagnosis. And unfortunately, on November the 5th, he decided that he was going to take his life. And
You were not home that day, were you?
no,
not?
I came back home. My mom had a gut feeling. She said, "You need to go to Clint. Something's not right. You need to go home." So I did. And I called him, and we have this little app called Life 360 where we can see where each other's at or whatever. And
yeah, I tracked my granddaughter that
yeah,
way.
it's a wonderful tool. It's a great tool. And so anyway, I called. I first tried to go find him but for some reason it was jumping around and I really couldn't see where he was at. So I called him and I said, "I was trying to sneak in on you and surprise you that I was coming home to see you." And I said, "But I'm home now." And I said, "Why don't you come home and see me?" You know. And he said, "Okay, I love you. Bye." You know. Actually, the way he said it was, I said, "I love you," and he said, "I love my Dana Lynn." It's what he always said. And so a few minutes later, I get a phone call back from him, and he says, "Well, I'll come home, but you're going to smell alcohol on me." And I said, "That's okay. That's okay. Come home anyway."
That's surprising to me.
Yeah.
Clint was had stepped away from alcohol so dramatically.
Yeah.
So
Well, it was the disease working on him that drove him back to it, you know.
Right.
And so anyway, we hung up the phone and I called my sister and I said, "Something ain't right," you know. Through the course of our conversation, Clint became agitated with me, and basically I thought he was leaving me all of a sudden. I was like, "Where, you know, where are you going?" or whatever. And he hung up the phone. And so I called my sister and I said, "Just stay on the phone with me until I find where he's at." And I went over there and it was dark, but my headlights hit the Jeep. And so I said, "Okay, sis, I found him." And I hung up. Well, after I hung up, I swung my car back and I could see him. He was laying on the shoreline. And I thought to myself, "Oh, he's just laying in the dark looking up at the stars." That's really what I thought. But then I started to see other things and I knew I could see what happened. We got Cedar County down there pretty quick, and he was breathing. He was taking like 2 or 3 breaths a minute. They did revive him. I didn't know what I was going to walk into at the hospital. They air flighted him, you know, from Stockton to Springfield, and got up there, and the doctor came in, same doctor that did my back surgery. So I was very familiar with the doctor. And she said that, I guess there's a scale, I can't remember what it's called, but like a 3 to 10 or 11, like brain activity. He was at a 3. And so, but they said they did, even at a 3, they saw some brain activity with him.
Right.
And so, and she said there's no chance for survival. So my dear sister Buffy, she sat with me that whole night, 23 hours. And I got to say everything I wanted to say. Family got to come and see him and say what they wanted to say. And I believe that was a window that God gave us. So that, you know, because Clint was such an amazing person.
You know, and Clint loved the Lord so much.
So
the
much.
Lord brought him out of his alcoholism and, you know, restored relationships in his life with his children and everything. And I was so horribly heartbroken when I heard he had shot himself. You know, it's like I couldn't believe that because I knew where he was with God.
Yes.
But Alzheimer's is a horrible disease.
Yeah.
I don't
It
care.
was a mental condition that drove him to do what he did. It wasn't like he didn't suffer with depression. He was happy. He
Yeah, he was always happy.
always happy. Lived life full on.
You know, and you all had been trying to get him in to see neurologists and
Yes,
stuff.
we were.
And
Mhm.
it's my understanding Clint tried to get in to see a psychologist too that would not see him.
Yes, he did.
You know,
He did.
and things like that I've never quite understood. I mean, I think the reasoning was that you had seen that psychologist
right.
previously,
hmm
and so they wouldn't see him
That's
because
right.
they had you as a patient.
That's right.
Um, had it been a number of years since you'd been there? Or?
No, I was currently seeing that psychologist. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I often wonder why they don't ask the patient, why they don't ask you if you
Mhm.
were comfortable with him seeing that
Yeah.
psychologist, so he would get the help he needed.
Right.
Um, but we talk about a lot of sad subjects here, and we go through all kinds of addictions, and we go through suicide, and we go through losing our children, and everything else we talk about here. There's no subject untouched on this
Yeah. Which
particular
that's a good
show,
thing. That's a good thing.
because the bottom line is we're celebrating you.
Yes.
You made it through all of this, and um, you've been able to move on in your life,
Mhm.
and know that there are people with you and praying for you, and
Mhm.
you've learned to lean on God an awful lot over the last
Oh yeah.
years, haven't
Yeah.
you?
Yes, I have. I could not take one step in this world without him anymore.
Hmm.
And I think if I was trying to get a message to men or women that are suffering through tragedies such as these, is that you really don't have to stay downtrodden. You can really grab hold
Mhm.
of the throne of God, and he will meet you exactly where you're at.
Yeah.
He will bring you joy when, you know, I don't see any joy in those stories that I just told you.
No,
That
I don't see
I
any
I
joys.
myself I myself couldn't pull joy out of it. Takes a loving, kind Savior to help me find the joy and peace in my life that I need.
Yeah.
I still go through struggles. I go through struggles right now. But that doesn't mean I can't walk through them with joy and peace, knowing that God is going to be there and meet me every step of the way.
And you at one point heard God's voice telling you,
Yes, he did.
take that first step and I'll meet you there.
I'll never forget that as long as I live.
Yeah. And so many people think, I'm too bad for God.
Yeah.
I've done too much stuff, bad stuff. I'm still addicted to drugs, or I'm
Well,
still addicted to alcohol.
yeah.
But
Who would God be for if
yeah,
it wasn't for the broken?
right.
If you're saintly and do all, if you're all perfect like that, why would we need God, right?
Mm-hmm. And it's amazing the way that if somebody would just take that one step,
Mm-hmm.
just realize I'm not doing well. This lifestyle isn't working for me,
Right.
or something. You know, people go through bad stuff and turn to drugs or alcohol instead of turning to God. But if they would just take that one step,
That's all it takes is
one step towards the Lord, then
Mhm.
He would help hold you up through all the bad times
Yes.
and give you healing and comfort in your heart.
Mhm.
We know that nothing like this is ever going to stop. I mean, we're all going to go through trials
Right.
through life, and
Yeah.
who knows? Your sons are doing well now, but in years to
Right.
come, they could come up with other issues because of
Right.
their injuries. And
Yes, I do have a daughter as well. She just didn't have we were talking about.
we don't want to forget all the
No,
children.
no.
Okay, the daughters are the
We,
ones.
we got Ryan is my oldest one, and then Josh, and then Nikki. She just had a baby, and he was a little preemie, and he's a 5-pound bundle of sugar. He just looks like a little sugar. He's so precious.
Yeah, too bad they changed the sugar bags to 4 pounds.
Oh, they did. That's right, they did.
Yeah, I delivered a baby on the side of the highway a few weeks ago.
Oh my
So
goodness. Oh my goodness.
he was 7 pounds 2 ounces.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, but we don't want to forget your daughter. I mean,
No.
if I forgot my daughter, she would call me and tell me about it. Immediately going,
Yeah.
oh, grandma,
Yeah.
mom, whatever.
There is one
Um,
thing I want to say. My mom, I was telling her about this, and she says, "Well, you tell them about the piece of advice that I give you," and that also stuck with me, and that was that it's not always going to be this way. No matter what you're going through, it won't always be that way. Sometimes we can feel stuck, like
mhm.
things are never going to change,
Yeah,
but they do. The only thing constant in this life is change. So,
yeah,
I held on to that too. You know,
yeah. We all have to remember that. I mean, we don't know from one day to the next what's going to happen.
right?
And even if tomorrow you wake up and something horrible has happened in the world and your family has been bombed out or whatever the
Mm-hmm.
case may be,
Mm-hmm.
it's not always going to be that way.
No,
And there is another day and another week, and just step forward.
right,
Just
right.
keep your head up and keep walking.
That's
You
right.
know,
Yeah.
uh, it becomes too easy for people just to shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they forget that, we've fallen so far away from our Bible in
Mm-hmm.
this country and
Yeah.
the world that people are not being understanding that the Lord is still there and He
Mm-hmm.
still wants to lift you up. He still wants to help you through things. And, like we said, that one step will bring you closer to the Lord, and He'll
Mm-hmm.
come and He'll step closer to you and He'll help you
Mm-hmm.
all the way along the line.
That's right. That's right.
You have a lot of praying friends
A
around the
lot.
world.
I do. I do. Coast to coast and other countries as
Hmm.
well. Yes, I do.
Yeah, you have a large contingent in
Yeah.
Stockton, I
I
know.
know. That's right. Shout out to the Stockton people. I
Yeah,
miss you. I miss you a lot.
yeah. Stockton is, we've only got 1,800 people, but we have 39 churches. It
Yeah.
is a praying
It
town.
sure is. It is.
And they all get together. We don't have any hate and discontent
No.
between the churches there. You
Yeah.
find that some places.
It was so funny when I first met Clint. I said, "Where do you go to church at?" "Oh, I'm attending about 5 churches right now." He literally went to about 5 churches in Stockton. He just visited,
Yeah,
visited.
he'd float
He,
around
yeah, he
and
did.
show up,
Yeah.
and he always had a hug.
Oh yeah.
Every time I ran into him, he
Oh
had a
yeah.
hug.
Yeah.
We had a pastor here. He died a couple of years ago, but we all threatened to make T-shirts that says "Hug like Dennis," because Dennis gave the
Yeah.
greatest hugs in the
Yeah.
world before he died.
Yeah. Yeah. Clint was like that too. He gave the best hugs.
Hmm. And it didn't matter where you were. He would
Mm-hmm.
always talk to you in the store and tell you that he was praying for you
Mm-hmm.
or
Yep.
God bless you or whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. He came out of that alcoholism with a major love for
Yes,
Christ,
he did. Yes.
and
He is. He
that all
did.
makes a difference to
And
all of us.
what was impressive to me with him is that he gave God glory in every aspect of his life. Like
Hmm.
when people would say something about, "Oh, your jet ski, that's not mine, that's God's.
Hmm.
These are God's toys. He's just loaned them to me." That's what he would say. He really knew how to give God the glory for everything.
Yeah, I had a client at the law firm I worked at, and she was the child of missionaries and was actually born in China. And she married a military man, and they traveled all over the world. And she gave God the glory on everything. And whenever her husband died, she became quite wealthy. She could have gone out and bought brand new cars with cash on any
Hmm.
given day, but she drove this great big giant boat, 1970 something, And she said, "No, God said I don't need a new car." And everything she had, she made sure that she asked God about it. And, everything she owned belonged to the Lord.
Yes.
And,
Mhm.
she gave her children each a nice inheritance, but
Mhm.
everything else was given to the church or missionaries
Yeah,
and things like that. She knew that it was all given to her by God, and she gave it back when she died. It was a major,
that's amazing.
you know,
Mhm.
it touched my heart so deeply.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
You know, I love her, and she'd come into the office and she'd have to kiss me on both cheeks so I wouldn't walk crooked.
That's sweet.
And that's always the way I thought about Clint. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
Clint is that one that's going to reach out and he's going to give you a hug and he's going to try to lift you up no
Yeah. If
matter
you were
what.
having a bad day, you'd be having a good day by the time you got through talking to
Mhm.
Clint. He was just that good.
And whenever he died, you did get the opportunity to say your goodbyes, and
Mhm.
he was enough there that he opened his eyes for
Yes,
you,
I
did he
said,
not?
honey, please open your pretty blue eyes. And he did.
Yeah.
And he did.
So you got that special
Yes.
goodbye thing from him.
Now, going forward after Clint's suicide, you go through a lot of emotions.
Yeah, and your head gets all twisted
It
around.
does. It does. And I told God, I said, God, I know you're here. I know you're not going to leave me. That didn't change that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. It just, there was one day I got mad at God. And I told him, I said, I know you're big enough to handle this.
Please forgive the words coming out of my
Yes,
mouth next.
yeah. What's coming next? Yeah, But I was very upset, So I'm not saying that it's easy to do by any means.
No.
I'm just saying that it is doable and that he will stay with you and walk through it. And then we went to a women's conference, and me and my aunt, and I was having a really hard time just imagining what Clint thought there at the end and stuff like that. And the pastor said he was talking about different things that women went through that they would never get an apology for.
Mm-hmm.
And he stood in the gap and he said, there's some of you out there that are never going to hear the apology because it's not possible for you to get the apology from the one that's probably hurt you the most, because it hurt when Clint did what he did.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm sorry. I'm standing in the gap for them, and they are sorry. And it just felt like God just came down on me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably the beginning of the next level of healing through this thing for me, that I got an apology. And I felt like it came straight from heaven.
It heals your heart whenever you can hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure some people were very nasty after Clint did what he did. You probably got 100 phone calls saying he's never going to heaven.
Oh, yeah. I did.
And I want all of you to know that it's a lie. Okay.
Yes.
There is nothing in scripture that says if you commit suicide that you're not going to go to heaven.
Right.
And people are, to me, that's very hurtful to call and tell somebody.
If it's not uplifting, encouraging, useful, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do that to someone that's already suffering. This is really bad. I even had someone accuse me of helping Clint.
Oh my.
That was the most hurtful thing.
Now, if I've heard so many things around the time that Clint died. They said that he had used your gun.
No, that's not right. No, that's not
right?
correct. No, he had bought a little, I think it was, what is it, Derringer, whatever they are. I'm not really.
Little Derringer.
Yeah. He had bought that. He had wanted that gun for a long time, and it was his gun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yes,
like I say,
yeah.
we need to cut part of the rumors out of the life here.
Yeah.
If you don't go to the source and get the correct response, well, then don't be spreading stories around.
Right.
We lived in a small town, so
everybody
seemed to know everybody.
There was quite a few rumors going around, and I appreciate the ones that would call me and ask me personally, and I was like, no, that didn't happen. I would just squash them, but I don't understand why people in tragedy need to embellish, and I don't know.
Yeah, you had a lot of phone calls from people just saying what happened.
Yes, I did.
But there was no encouragement behind those phone calls.
No, it's just flat out, I want to know what's going on, basically. And I said, do you really need to know? I mean, what does it matter? He's gone, so what does it matter?
Yeah.
I wasn't ready to talk about anything at that point, you know,
Mhm.
and I mean, we're just talking fresh within weeks of him passing away. And
uh,
that's
when
hard. That's another thing not to do to someone that's lost their spouse to suicide. Don't call them up and say, I heard that he, you know, whatever.
mhm,
That's not a good
you
thing.
know, no, if somebody has a loss like that, don't tell them their spouse or their child or somebody's going to go to hell.
No.
Okay,
Mhm.
that's something perpetrated by the Catholic Church, for the
Yeah.
most part.
Yeah.
And like I say, there is nothing in Scripture that says you're going to hell, because if you take that step, you have a mental illness
Right.
that is pushing you.
Right. He was not himself. He was out of his mind to do that. You can't
Yeah.
be in your right mind and do something like that.
And I think Clint would have apologized immediately to
Oh yeah.
you and, said, I'm sorry. Let's,
Yeah.
you know,
Hmm.
can we take it back?
He would have. Yes, he would have.
But whenever you make that step, a lot of times you're not going to be able to
Right.
take it back.
Yeah. It's a very permanent decision to short-term problems, really.
Right.
And we've got to remember that. That's a permanent decision.
And
So
so
always reach out.
yeah,
Always reach out. There's someone that will listen. You can get help.
yeah. And, the ones who are left, they're the ones who are suffering.
Right. Yeah.
You already had depression before all of this
Mhm.
started. You were in a wheelchair for a
Mhm.
while. You were on disability for a while.
Mhm.
You're back working
That's
these
right. I
days.
am. God healed me,
Yeah, God
and I
healed
love
you.
my job. And
Yeah, and you get to work with one of your sons every day and
yes,
make sure
yeah.
he doesn't stick his hand in conveyor belts.
Yes, that's right.
So the Lord opened some doors for
Yes,
you.
he did.
And he also opened your heart to a new husband.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about him?
No, Wes. He is retired Navy. He served for 15 years, and he has a disability, his back. And I love him. He's a wonderful man. I'm not saying we don't have our struggles and our
Oh, everybody has struggles.
Yeah, we have him, but I love him, and I'm glad he's a big part of my life.
Yeah. And you met him at church, did you
Yeah,
not?
that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought so.
Hmm.
So even though we all knew how much you loved Clint,
Hmm.
and I have never had a doubt about your love for your children. And Dana's very good about reaching out and asking people for prayer. And I want to tell you, if you've got a problem and you can't find your way out of it, you know, just put out a call for prayer.
Yes.
That peace, if you believe that the Lord is with you, if you believe that there is a God in heaven,
Yes.
and you reach out and ask somebody for prayer, you're going to find a peace in your heart coming on.
Yes.
My son was mad at God for a lot of years, and he was an alcoholic, and spent some time in jail because of that. He was like a month, no, 2 months from getting his driving privileges back that he'd lost for 10 years
Mhm.
when he died. But every time there was something going on in his life, even though he wouldn't go to church or do it on its own, he would call me and say, Mom, I need you to pray for me. So I knew that love he had for God before was still there somewhere.
Yes.
Because he would call and say, I need you to pray for me.
And the word says that, if we bring our children up in the way they should go when they're old, they will not depart from it.
Right.
And
And so that's one thing I encourage everyone to do. Even if you're not walking the way the Lord instructs us to walk,
mhm.
if you know that there's a Lord in heaven, there's a God,
Mhm.
and you're going through any kind of major depression, you're going through an addiction, you're going through a bad breakup, whatever the case may be, just get on your Facebook account, which I
Mhm.
know most of you have,
Yeah.
and say, please pray for me. You
Yes.
don't have to
I
elaborate.
tell you, some of the best, I've done that. You've seen that I've done that several
Mhm.
times. And I'm telling you, within the hour, I can literally feel
Mhm.
the prayers,
Yeah.
And my burden gets lifted and I get in a better mood. And I know people are praying for me. You can feel it.
Right. I put out requests for prayers, and I know the ones that say they're going to are going to bring me that peace and understanding that I require in my heart.
Right.
And if you say you're going to pray for somebody, please do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. We were talking about that. Yeah.
We don't want lip service here.
Right.
We
That's
want
right. The real
genuine
deal.
prayers.
The real deal. That's right.
And those are the things that got you through and helped you move on in your life.
Mhm.
And you've got a nice husband these days. We all have problems. I
Yeah,
mean,
we do.
I've not seen a single marriage in my life that did
And it
not
doesn't,
have
yeah.
problems.
Let's say
at
the
some
first
point.
year is kind of the roughest, right?
Mhm.
Is that right? I don't know,
Yeah.
but but we'll get through it. We'll get
Right.
through it.
The Lord's with you, and you know
Right.
that you can
Yeah.
do
I
that.
can do anything. Yeah.
And so, no matter what bad things have happened in your life, I've had people on here that have had children commit suicide or overdose and things like that, but they still clung to the Lord.
Mhm.
The Lord did not make that decision for Clint.
That's
Clint
right.
made that on
On
his own.
Yeah.
And he had a mental thing going on at that point where he wasn't thinking straight. He never
Right.
would have done that
No,
otherwise.
he would not have.
But, one of the bottom lines is pray. If
Mhm.
you say you'll pray, then
Mhm.
do it.
Mhm.
If you're going through a bad time, ask somebody to
Right.
pray.
Yes.
And, just hold someone's hand if they need it. I mean, even if they don't want to talk, if you can be
Yeah.
there and,
Right.
just be close.
Right.
Don't ask questions to get into the nitty gritty when you're
Yeah.
still trying to deal with it yourself.
Yes.
Those
Yes.
things will,
Right here, I want to say something about my friend Marquita. During those, she lives in Alabama,
Mhm.
and we would just get on, like, how you can share movies. We'd just get on the computer and watch movies together.
Yeah.
After I lost Clint, she'd just watch a movie with me from that distance. Just anything like that, it helps.
Yeah, and if you're going to do something like that, do it now, because sooner or later all the communications are going to shut down in this country. The Bible tells us that we're
Yes.
not,
Yeah.
we're going to be in a bad way.
Yeah.
But yeah, just take the time to watch a movie with someone, be able
Mhm.
to communicate back and forth, even online. You
Mhm.
could still communicate back and forth
Mhm.
online,
Yes.
and reach out with positive thoughts.
Mhm.
Don't ask the individual to dwell on what has gone on that's bad. But on the other hand, if you wanted to talk about it, be there
Right.
without judgment.
Right.
Be there and allow that person to say what's on their mind and
Mhm.
on their heart, and don't shut them down just because it's not a conversation you're comfortable with. Because
Right.
sometimes you have to talk about
Yeah.
what went on in the past. You got to talk about Josh's injuries
Mhm.
and Clint's suicide
Mhm.
and your own suicidal thoughts in the past.
Right.
You were suicidal after Clint died, also, were you not?
Yes, I did go through one bout of it, and but God help me. I mean,
Mhm.
that one didn't last as long as the ones that were previous. That bout of depression didn't last as long.
Yep. Well,
But yeah,
by
yeah,
this point, you've drawn a lot closer to Christ,
yes,
too.
yes. So He helped me through that one rather quickly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
You've learned to depend on that and know that
hmm
the Lord's going to be
yes,
with you. So,
absolutely.
you know, bottom line on all of this is it doesn't matter what has happened in your life or
Yeah,
how horrible it is.
right.
There's no reason to lay down and just give up.
That's right.
You know,
There
if
is always hope.
there's always hope, and just cling to God and cling to those that are close to you
Yes.
and get past it, because you've managed to move past. You
Mm-hmm.
found a new husband, a
Mm-hmm.
new life. You
Mm-hmm.
got out of your disability, and you've got a
Mm-hmm.
wonderful job you like right now where you
Yes.
can keep track of your son.
Yeah.
And so just remember that in life.
Yes.
And I have to thank Dana immensely for coming
Thank
today.
you so much for having me. It's been
Yeah.
my pleasure.
Yeah. And on a personal note, I need to thank the people back here behind the cameras, Mark and Jody and Jaden And then Dr. Whining and his wife Pam were coming to Stockton yesterday and helping put my church back together that someone attacked. And
I'll be
so-
praying for you. I will be praying for you.
yeah, that's the thing. If you're going to say, if you say you're going to pray, then do it. But Dana's always been good about praying for whoever asks for prayer.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons, that's how we got involved with
It
one
is.
another. Yeah.
That's right.
Through Christ.
Mhm.
So anyway, we want to thank everyone for being here, and we will talk with you all again next week.